We are on day number 12. 12. This is, it's funny because as I'm doing these, I'm realizing how small my wardrobe is. And I keep having to look at the old videos and decide, what should I wear today? When was the last time I wore this shirt? And it's just kind of funny. I realize I'm gonna have to invest in a little bigger wardrobe if I make a lot of these videos. It's something that I really haven't had to think about, So today's video is lessons learned. The lessons that I've learned from I'm over 400 hours of time invested in my Zettelkasten. And when I say time invested, it's time invested in curation. It's time invested in, knowledge and growth. I spend about 29 and a half hours. That's kind of the average that I figured out every week on working on this stuff. And it's almost another full-time job. Now, it's not a job at all. It's so enjoyable to me that I can keep adding to my well of inspiration. It's so fun, and making the connections, it's so fun. These are the lessons that I've learned since starting mine. The lesson 1, don't get caught up in the categories. When you start your Zettelkasten, you might start with the outline of academic disciplines. You've got the 5 main categories. When I started, if I found a profound thought, I would write that card down, and then I'd be like, what is this related to? Well, I don't have anything yet. So then I would start, applied sciences, right? And I would go down into all these levels of categories before finally my card would fit. That really set me off on the wrong footing, because the system is not about hard categories. It's not about putting things in topically under certain things. It's about find the card that is most closely related to the new thing that you found, and put it next to it. And as you do that, you build out your own soft categories. We've talked about this, but I can't stress it enough. Some people don't even want to do categories, and I appreciate that thought. I think it's legitimate. I'm interested in this topic. Okay, put it in my next number. 1001, 1002, 1003, or maybe split those, 1010, 1020, 1030, But I spent so much time focused on building out this structure that really is unnecessary. And in fact, if you keep doing that, you won't experience the Zettelkasten like Lumen intended. If you do that for a while, you're not going to break the system. I did it for a while. You're not going to break the system, because things are still going to work. You can still link from this to that. And if you have a deep level of categorization, fine, that's cool. Now, eventually what'll happen is your addresses will get pretty long at the top of a card. If your card starts to get a really long address and you come up and you've got an idea that you think you're going to expand on, put a new card at a top level number, 4-digit number, and then place another card behind the one and just link it. Say these ideas continue at this card. Then your addresses stay short. You never lose it, because you're reviewing this information and you see, I've got another section related to this, or I've got another place where this section continues. These ideas continue. The second lesson, and this is kind of interesting because there was a Reddit post either yesterday or this morning. I saw it this morning. And this person was concerned when they were writing their note. Is this a literature note? Is this a permanent note? Is this what's the other one? Is this a fleeting note? Those three different types of notes, Lumen didn't focus on that. A note was a note, unless you're talking about like observation notes on source cards. If the idea, if the quote, if the concept, even if the question resonates with you and you want to keep a record of it, create a card. It's your system. And on these cards, write your own thoughts on these cards. Write them in your own words, write your own thoughts on these cards. Even if it's like, maybe your note is, I don't understand this concept fully. I need to do some more research. The Zettelkasten is meant to be immutable, meaning unchanging, meaning you can add to, but you can never take away from. Your ideas, your thoughts, they're going to change over time. And it's really cool to see that change and to have a record of that change. Don't get hung up on classification of notes. Sunke Ahrens, he came up with those terms. And that was his interpretation of how Lumen did it. But a note is a note. That's what somebody else replied to this person. Third lesson. Get in the habit of starting a source card every time you start watching a YouTube video, every time you start reading a book. Get in the habit. Train your brain. I'm not just consuming content. I am expecting to find some kind of insight. This is more of what I've come to understand the Zettelkasten as being, and I've talked about this too, but the Zettelkasten is a tool for discovering, developing, and articulating your worldview. Include things you disagree with, and know why you disagree with them, or if you don't know why you disagree with them, write the question. Why do I disagree with this? I just do. And I need to come back to this maybe. The path to truth eventually gets paved with enough questions. The interesting thing about that is when you get to the destination, there will be two gates. One's going to be a narrow gate and one's going to be a wide gate. And most people are going to be going through the wide gate. Choose the narrow one. That's when you're getting very, very close. And go ahead and look up Matthew 7:13 when you get a chance. I've created a section on cognitive biases because I think they're very important. We all have them. And that's the way our brains work. So study them, figure them out. And do I have confirmation bias? Do I have whatever? This idea of the path being paved. There's a book, Gregory Kokel, and there's a foreword by Lee Strobel. And I believe he writes isn't the Case for Christ? I think he writes the Case for Christ, Lee Strobel does, but Gary Kokel wrote this book called Tactics. And in it, he's talking about sharing your faith. And he says, one of the goals when he's talking to people that don't have a Christian worldview is to find a way to put a stone in their shoe. Eventually they'll start thinking about that. It'll bug them and they might ask the right questions. And that's kind of going along the idea that the path to truth is paved with enough questions. Because I could just, I picture that analogy where, the person's walking along, they rip off their shoe, they get the rock and they toss it. And then they've asked that question. Tossing it might not be the right analogy, but they answer that question and okay, it's no longer an issue. And then another stone gets put in the shoe. and then another stone. And eventually you have the path paved. No secular spiritual dichotomy. It's holistic. I look for every opportunity I can to tie scriptures to my cards, and then I put them in my Bible index. Then you have it all throughout, like I've already talked about. Don't get rid of old stuff. My thought is that once it's in there, it's in there. Where it's at, you can add to, but never take away from. I want to see the history. I want to see how this builds over time. I think it'll be fascinating to see how I once thought about certain things versus what I think about them today. There's probably more I'm not thinking about. There will be more videos, I'm sure. Day 12. There's 18 days left. Keep seeking the Lord's face, and God bless. So, funny thing happened this morning. I was talking about my wardrobe and my lack thereof. Walked outside this morning, take the trash out. This nice vest was right on my porch. So, ask and you shall receive, right?